White CEO refused to shake a black investor's hand 24 hours later. She was desperate to meet him. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. I don't shake hands with your kind. The words landed sharp and unapologetic, cutting straight through the polished calm of the corporate lobby. For a brief second, time stalled. The black man standing at the center of the room had his hand extended steady, open, professional. He wore a simple navy polo, tailored slacks, no visible logos, no performance of wealth. Just composure. Just confidence. The kind that didn't ask for permission. Across from him stood the woman who had spoken. She was the CEO, white, mid-40s, dressed in a cream designer suit that screamed authority without saying a word. Her arms were crossed now, chin tilted slightly upward, lips curved into a smile that wasn't friendly. It was curated. Practiced. The kind of smile that had shut doors for people like him her entire career. Behind her, a line of executives and senior staff watched the exchange unfold like a live demonstration. Men in tailored jackets. Women in neutral heels. All of them standing just far enough back to feel safe. Some smirked. Some laughed quietly. A few exchanged glances that said, "This should be interesting." The man's hand remained suspended in the air. Not shaking. Not trembling. Just, waiting. Glass walls stretched upward around them, flooding the space with morning light. The company logo gleamed behind the CEO, steel letters mounted on marble. This was her kingdom. Her stage. You must be confused, she continued lightly, as if clarifying a minor scheduling error. We don't allow just anyone to waltz in here and pretend they belong in executive meetings. A ripple of quiet laughter moved through the group behind her. Someone folded their arms tighter. Someone else leaned in, eager not to miss what came next. The man slowly lowered his hand. Not in embarrassment. Not in defeat. In acknowledgement. He nodded once, calmly, as though she'd just confirmed something he already knew. The CEO noticed and mistook his silence for submission. Security vetted the list, she said, glancing sideways at her assistant. I don't recall approving a meeting with him. Her eyes flicked back to the man, scanning him now. His clothes. His posture. The absence of a badge. Of status symbols she recognized. He didn't look angry. He didn't look offended. If anything, he looked thoughtful. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Marcus. Marcus finally spoke. Understood, he said quietly. That was it? 2 syllables. No edge. No defense. The CEO raised an eyebrow, almost disappointed. Good, she replied. Then we won't waste each other's time. She turned slightly, signaling the conversation was over. One of the executives behind her chuckled under his breath. Another checked his phone. The room had already decided who mattered. Marcus didn't move. Instead, he let his eyes drift not to the CEO, but to the space around her. The glass conference rooms. The digital screens scrolling quarterly projections. The people who thought this building belonged to them. He had seen places like this before. Built on leverage. Sustained by confidence. Dependent on capital they didn't fully understand. The CEO noticed his lingering presence and frowned. Is there a problem? Marcus met her gaze then. Calm. Measured. No, he said. Not at all. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, not in a rush, not dramatically. Just enough to check a notification that had arrived seconds earlier. The CEO scoffed softly. You can see yourself out. Marcus looked up again, a faint smile touching the corner of his mouth. Of course, he said. I wouldn't want to overstay my welcome. He turned and walked toward the exit, footsteps echoing lightly against the marble floor. Conversations resumed almost immediately behind him. Laughter. Small talk. The comfort of people certain they just put someone in his place. None of them noticed the message Marcus typed as he crossed the threshold. 3 words. Hold everything. Effective immediately. By the time the glass doors slid shut behind him, the CEO was already moving on to her next meeting, completely unaware that the man she refused to shake hands with had just made a decision that would unravel her entire quarter. And this was only the beginning. The glass doors slid shut behind Marcus with a soft pneumatic hiss, sealing the lobby back into its familiar rhythm. Laughter returned first. Not loud. Not cruel enough to draw attention. Just enough to reassure everyone inside that order had been restored. Well, one executive murmured, adjusting his cufflinks, that was awkward. The CEO exhaled through a smile, already turning away. Some people mistake access for importance, she said lightly. It happens more than you'd think. A few heads nodded. Someone chuckled. Another checked their watch. The moment had passed. Or so they believed. In the reception area, Marcus paused just long enough to take in the reflection of the building's logo on the polished floor. From this angle, the letters looked heavier. More fragile. Like something that depended entirely on the illusion of permanence. He slipped his phone back into his pocket and stepped into the morning. Inside, the CEO was already walking toward the executive corridor, heels clicking with purpose. Her assistant fell into step beside her, tablet hugged to her chest. Reschedule the call with Zurich, the CEO said. And push the horizon numbers to Friday. I want the board focused. Yes, of course. They passed through a glass hallway where framed magazine covers lined the walls. Her face, her quotes, her company hailed as the future. The staff straightened as she went by. This was a woman who inspired confidence. Control. Certainty. She paused briefly at the entrance to the main conference room. And make sure security tightens guest access, she added. I don't want distractions today. Understood. The doors closed behind her. Across the building, in a quieter wing most employees rarely visited, the CFO stared at his screen, brow furrowing. He refreshed it once. Then again. The numbers didn't change. He leaned closer, fingers tapping the desk. A line item 1 he checked every morning without fail was suddenly highlighted in red. Pending. That wasn't right. He pulled up the funding schedule. Scanned it quickly. Then more slowly. A knot formed in his stomach. He reached for his phone. In the executive conference room, the CEO was mid-sentence, outlining next quarter's expansion with effortless authority. Charts glowed behind her. The board listened, engaged, impressed. Her phone buzzed once on the table. She ignored it. Then it buzzed again. She frowned slightly, irritation flickering across her face, and picked it up. A message from the CFO. Call me. Now. She hesitated just a fraction of a second, then silenced the phone and continued. Which puts us in a dominant position going into the next cycle, she concluded smoothly. Polite applause followed. The CEO smiled. Thank you. Let's take 5 before. The doors opened. The CFO stood there, pale, breathing just a little too fast. Every head turned. I'm sorry, he said, voice tight, but this can't wait. The CEO's smile hardened. You're interrupting. I know, he replied. But we have a problem. The room shifted. She gestured sharply. 5 minutes, she told the board, then stood and followed him into the hallway. What is it? She demanded in a low voice. He glanced around, then leaned closer. The Keystone Tranche, he said. It's been put on hold. She blinked. That's impossible. It was confirmed. It was, he said. Past tense. Her jaw tightened. By whom? He swallowed. The primary capital authority. Silence stretched between them. That doesn't make sense, she said. We haven't had any disputes. No renegotiations. No. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she looked. Unknown number. She stared at the screen, irritation giving way to something else. Something colder. Who did this? She asked quietly. The CFO hesitated. We're still tracing it. But the order was clean. Authorized. No appeal window. Her fingers curled around the phone. In her mind, an image surfaced uninvited. A man standing calmly in the lobby. A hand extended. A voice saying, understood. She shook it off. Find out, she snapped. Now. Yes. As he hurried away, the CEO remained still, staring at the glass wall in front of her. For the first time that morning, the building felt different. Less solid. And somewhere across the city, Marcus sat comfortably in the back seat of a car, eyes forward, as his phone lit up once more. A single reply appeared on the screen. Confirmed. All channels paused. He nodded, the faintest hint of a smile forming not of satisfaction, but of certainty. The room had taken sides. Now, it would learn the cost. By noon, the narrative inside the building had settled into something comfortable. The man from the lobby had become a story shrunk, simplified, harmless. He was just testing access, one manager said over lunch. Probably looking for attention, another replied. Or leverage he doesn't actually have. The CEO didn't correct them. She sat at the head of the long table, composed, fingers steepled, listening as her leadership team dissected the morning like it was already behind them. The interruption. The delay. The funding hiccup. Minor turbulence. Temporary. These things happen, she said calmly. Capital moves. Priorities shift. Someone nodded eagerly. Exactly. It'll resolve itself. She believed that. Or needed to. In her world, power was visible. It wore credentials. It had titles and offices and assistants who cleared hallways before it arrived. Power announced itself. Power asked to be acknowledged. The man in the lobby had done none of that. Which is why she dismissed him. Across town, Marcus sat in a quiet office that didn't display a logo. The space was understated wood, glass, clean lines. No awards on the walls. No photographs. Just a large table, a laptop, and 3 people who spoke only when necessary. On the screen in front of him, a live dashboard updated in real time. Green lines paused. Yellow alerts surfaced. One by one, systems registered the change. A woman seated to his left glanced up. They haven't connected the dots yet. Marcus didn't respond. Another voice, calm and analytical, came from the opposite side of the table. Once the secondary exposure triggers, they'll notice. How long? Someone asked. Hours, the analyst replied. At most. Marcus leaned back slightly, hands folded. No rush, he said. Back at headquarters, the CEO's assistant approached cautiously. The Zurich call pushed back again, she said. They cited internal review. The CEO's pen paused mid-note. Again, she asked. Yes. She looked up, eyes narrowing just a touch. Put legal on standby. A flicker of unease passed through the room. Still subtle. Still deniable. By mid-afternoon, the CFO returned, this time without knocking. We have another issue, he said. The CEO closed her laptop slowly. Define issue. The revolving credit line, he said. It's tightening. That doesn't happen without notice. It did. Her gaze sharpened. From who? He hesitated. Multiple channels. Same authority. The room went quiet. Someone cleared their throat. Is this related to? No, the CEO said quickly. Too quickly. It's not. But the image returned again, uninvited. A man who hadn't argued. Who hadn't explained. Who had simply left. Get me a list, she said. Every entity with clearance at that level. The CFO nodded and turned to go. As the door closed, the CEO stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. From this height, everything looked smaller. Manageable. Owned. Yet something felt off. Power, she realized, didn't always stand in front of you demanding to be seen. Sometimes it walked out quietly and waited. Across the city, Marcus's phone vibrated once. He glanced at the screen. Secondary exposure confirmed. He exhaled slowly. They'll start asking the wrong questions now, the analyst said. Marcus stood. Good, he replied. That means they're right on schedule. Because the most dangerous moment wasn't when they knew who he was. It was when they thought they didn't need to. There was a reason Marcus never corrected people when they underestimated him. It saved time. Years earlier, long before glass towers and boardrooms learned his name, he had learned how quickly rooms changed once people knew who held the leverage. Conversations stiffened. Smiles turned strategic. Respect became performance. He preferred the version of power that moved unseen. In the quiet office downtown, the analyst rotated his screen toward him. A clean structure diagram filled the display boxes, arrows, layered entities designed to look harmless unless you knew how to read them. She thinks Keystone is the source, the analyst said. It isn't. Marcus nodded. It never is. Keystone was only the front. The visible tap. The thing executives like to point at during earnings calls. The real flow moved deeper. 3 funds. 2 intermediaries. 1 final authority that never appeared on pitch decks or public filings. That authority answered to Marcus. Not because he demanded control, but because years ago, when others hesitated, he had moved. Quietly. Precisely. At scale. A voice came through the speakerphone. Board exposure is climbing. If they lose the secondary buffer, the dominoes start. Marcus glanced at the city skyline beyond the window. They won't lose it, he said. They'll freeze. That's worse. Freezing led to mistakes. Mistakes revealed character. Back at headquarters, the CEO sat alone in her office, jacket draped over the chair. The confidence from the morning had thinned, replaced by calculation. Her assistant hovered near the door. Legal wants to know if they should initiate contact. With whom? The CEO asked. That's the problem, the assistant said carefully. We don't know. The CEO's lips pressed into a thin line. In her career, there had always been names. Competitors. Adversaries. Someone to push against. This time, there was only absence. Run a background sweep, she ordered. Lobby footage. Visitor logs. Everything. Minutes later, security footage appeared on her screen. Marcus, standing calmly in the lobby. No badge. No escort. No rush. She leaned closer, studying him as if the image might reveal something she missed. "He doesn't look important," she muttered. That was the mistake. Across town, Marcus's phone vibrated again. "Zurich has initiated review. Frankfurt next." He silenced it. One of the analysts looked up. "Once Frankfurt moves, the board will panic." "They already are," Marcus said. "They just don't know why." He remembered the CEO's face in the lobby. The certainty. The ease with which she dismissed him. It wasn't cruelty that stayed with him. It was familiarity. He had seen it before in banks that closed doors, in firms that overlooked signatures, in rooms that assumed access equaled worth. He never raised his voice in those rooms. He let the system speak instead. Back in her office, the CEO stood and paced. The city below no longer looked manageable. It looked distant. Her phone rang. An unfamiliar number. She stared at it for a long moment before answering. "Yes," she said. A pause. Her expression shifted not to fear, but to focus. "I see," she said slowly. "Thank you for informing me." She hung up and stood very still. Whatever was moving against her wasn't loud. It wasn't reckless. It was deliberate. And for the first time, the CEO wondered not who was attacking her company, but who she had refused to shake hands with that morning. By late afternoon, the building no longer hummed with confidence. It whispered. Emails stopped flowing the way they should. Calls went unanswered just long enough to feel intentional. Meetings ended early, not because decisions had been made but because no one wanted to say the wrong thing out loud. In the executive suite, the CEO stood at the head of the conference table, hands planted firmly on the glass surface. Around her, the board members sat stiffly, tablets dark, conversations clipped. "Let's be clear," one of them said. "This isn't a fluctuation. This is coordination." The CEO nodded once. "I agree." Another voice followed. "Do we know who's behind it?" Silence. She straightened. "Not yet." The CFO shifted uncomfortably. "Whoever it is has access we don't see. And they're not negotiating." That word lingered. Not negotiating. The CEO felt it settle in her chest. For the first time, the situation wasn't something she could manage with leverage or charm. There was no call to make. No room to dominate. Only a narrowing path. "Give us the options," she said. The CFO hesitated. "We wait and hope it reverses. Or we identify the source and request a meeting. And if they refuse, then," he said carefully, "we brace." Across the city, Marcus sat alone now. The analysts had stepped out. The screens continued their quiet work without commentary. The room felt still, deliberately so. His phone buzzed. A new number. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood and walked to the window. Below, traffic moved in predictable patterns, unaware of how fragile systems really were when one node decided to stop cooperating. He thought of the lobby again. The hand that wasn't shaken. The smile that dismissed him. The room that laughed. None of it made him angry. It clarified things. His phone buzzed again. Then a third time. Marcus turned back, picked it up, and finally answered. "Yes," he said. There was a pause on the other end. Controlled. Polite. "This is," the voice began. "I know who it is," Marcus said calmly. Another pause. Longer this time. "We'd like to understand your concerns," the voice continued, choosing each word carefully. "Perhaps we can arrange a conversation." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. This was the moment. Not the collapse. Not the apology. The moment where power decided whether to reveal itself or let silence keep working. "I've already seen enough," Marcus replied. The line went quiet. He ended the call. At headquarters, the CEO's phone rang almost immediately. She answered on the first ring. "Yes," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The message was brief. "Clinical. They won't be meeting," the CFO said from across the table, having just received the same update. "Not yet." Her fingers tightened around the phone. Outside, the sky darkened, clouds rolling in as if on cue. The city lights flickered on one by one, illuminating a company that suddenly felt exposed. Back downtown, Marcus sent one final message. Not a threat. Not an explanation. Just a confirmation. Proceed. He placed the phone face down on the table and sat back, the decision fully made. From here on out, everything that happened would be a consequence not of revenge, but of a handshake that never happened. The first thing to break wasn't the stock. It was the rhythm. Overnight, systems that had always responded instantly began to hesitate. Approval queues stalled. Automated confirmations failed to arrive. Nothing crashed, but nothing moved forward either. By morning, the executive floor felt heavier. The CEO arrived early, coffee untouched, eyes fixed on the live metrics streaming across the screen in her office. She watched as one indicator after another shifted from green to yellow. Not red. Not yet. Yellow was worse. Yellow meant uncertainty. The CFO entered without knocking. "We've lost provisional clearance on 2 expansion corridors," he said. No explanation. Just, pending. "Pending with whom?" she asked. "That's the problem," he replied. "Everyone says the same thing. Waiting on upstream confirmation." She leaned back slowly. Upstream. The word echoed. At 10 a.m., legal reported that an insurance backstop had been temporarily reclassified. At 10:30, procurement flagged a supplier who suddenly required cash up front. At 11, a partner firm postponed a signing until visibility improves. None of it was dramatic. All of it was fatal. In the boardroom, voices stayed low. No one wanted to be the first to say it. "This is coordinated," one director finally whispered. The CEO nodded. "I know." "Then we need to engage," another said. "Publicly, if we have to." She shook her head. "You don't engage something you can't see." Across the city, Marcus watched the same movements from a different angle. On his screen, the system behaved exactly as designed. No force. No pressure. Just removal. He listened as an analyst summarized the cascade. Liquidity is tightening across their dependencies. No single choke point. It's clean. Good, Marcus said. Keep it that way. He stood and walked to the whiteboard, where a simple timeline was sketched. Not dates, responses. Confusion. Denial. Inquiry. They were moving right on time. Back at headquarters, the CEO stood before the board again, her voice steady but sharper now. "We will not panic," she said. "We will not issue statements. We will identify the authority and request terms." "And if there are none?" someone asked. She didn't answer immediately. Her assistant slipped in quietly and placed a tablet in front of her. "This just came in," she whispered. The CEO scanned the message. No sender. No subject. Just a single line. Visibility reduced as requested. Her breath caught just slightly. She dismissed the room and retreated to her office, closing the door behind her. Alone, she replayed the morning in the lobby, frame by frame. The hand. The pause. The way he had looked at the building, not her. She picked up her phone and scrolled to the unknown number. Hesitated. Then dialed. It rang once. Then went to voicemail. Across town, Marcus silenced the call without listening. "This part matters," he said to no one in particular. They have to sit with it. By evening, the stock finally dipped. Not a collapse, just enough to trigger alerts. Analysts began asking questions they couldn't answer. Journalists started circling. In her office, the CEO stared at the city lights, reflection fractured in the glass. For the first time, she understood the shape of what was happening. This wasn't an attack. It was an absence. An absence, she realized too late, was impossible to negotiate with. Somewhere in the quiet, a lesson was being delivered patiently, precisely. By a man whose hand she never shook. By the next morning, the illusion was gone. The stock opened lower than expected, not enough to trigger headlines, but enough to rattle confidence. Analysts called it market hesitation. Internally, they called it something else. Fear. The CEO stood in the same lobby as the day before, watching screens flicker with updates that refused to stabilize. Phones rang unanswered. Assistants whispered instead of spoke. The building no longer felt like hers. At 9:12 a.m., the board convened an emergency call. Faces filled the screen, tight, impatient, alarmed. "We're exposed," one director said bluntly. "Liquidity, perception, leverage. All of it. We need the source," another added. "Now." The CEO inhaled slowly. "We're working on it." "Working how?" a voice snapped. "Because from where we're sitting, you lost control." That landed harder than she expected. Minutes later, the CFO rushed in, tablet in hand. "We found him." Her head snapped up. "Who?" "The man from yesterday," he said. "The lobby." Silence swallowed the room. "He's not just an investor," the CFO continued. "He's the gate. Everything routes through entities he controls or influences." Her chest tightened. "Name?" "Marcus Hale." The name meant nothing and everything. "Get him," she said immediately. "Now." Calls went out. Emails followed. Assistants abandoned protocol. By noon, the CEO was no longer delegating. She was asking. "Has he responded? Did he see the message? Try again." Each attempt disappeared into the same quiet void. At 1:47 p.m., her phone finally rang. Unknown number. She answered without hesitation. "This is." "I know who you are," Marcus said calmly. Her throat tightened. "I'd like to meet." A pause. "Why?" he asked. She searched for the right tone. Authority wouldn't work. Charm wouldn't either. "Because we made a mistake," she said. "And I'd like the opportunity to correct it." Another pause. "Longer this time." "Tomorrow," Marcus replied. "If I decide it's worth my time." The line went dead. The CEO lowered the phone slowly, hands trembling just enough to notice. Around her, the room waited. "He'll meet," she said quietly. "We just have to hope he listens." Outside, rain began to fall, streaking down the glass facade of the building she once ruled without question. Across the city, Marcus stood by a window of his own, watching the weather shift. They always begged eventually. The only question was whether it would be enough. The meeting room was smaller than she expected. No glass walls. No skyline view. Just a solid wooden table, 2 chairs, and a quiet that felt intentional. The CEO arrived early, 10 minutes early, for the first time in years. She stood when Marcus entered. He wore the same calm presence he had the day before. Same measured pace. Same absence of urgency. He didn't offer his hand. She noticed. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she said, forcing steadiness into her voice. Marcus took his seat without responding. He placed his phone face down on the table, then looked at her, not with anger, not with triumph, but with focus. "You asked for this," he said. She nodded. Yes. A pause settled between them. In that silence, the power dynamic completed its reversal. Yesterday, she had controlled the room by denying him a gesture. Today, the room belonged to him because he didn't need one. I misjudged you, she said carefully. And I regret how that interaction unfolded. Marcus listened without interrupting. We value partnerships, she continued. And I believe there's still a path forward. He raised a hand slightly. Not to silence her. To slow her down. You didn't misjudge me, he said calmly. You dismissed me. Her jaw tightened. There's a difference. She exhaled. Then let me be clear. I was wrong. Marcus studied her for a long moment. When you refused to shake my hand, he said, you weren't protecting your company. You were signaling who deserved access. She swallowed. And when you walked away, he continued, you showed everyone watching that dignity is optional when power feels secure. The words landed without heat. That made them heavier. She nodded once. What do you want? Marcus leaned back slightly. Nothing personal, he said. I don't need apologies. I don't need explanations. He glanced at his phone, then back at her. I need to know whether you understand the cost of assuming someone's worth. She met his gaze, this time without deflection. I do now. Another pause. Marcus stood. The systems will resume, he said. Not because you asked but because the lesson has been delivered. Relief flashed across her face before she could stop it. But understand this, he added. The next time someone extends their hand, the outcome won't depend on who they appear to be. He turned toward the door. She stood quickly. Marcus. He stopped, but didn't turn around. This time, she extended her hand. It stayed there steady, waiting. Marcus looked at it for a moment. Then, slowly, deliberately, he shook it. Not as a favor. As a reminder. And when he walked out, the CEO remained standing alone in a room that would never feel the same again. The systems resumed quietly. No announcements. No press releases. No victory laps. By the following week, the stock stabilized. Credit lines reopened. Partners returned with cautious smiles and carefully worded emails. On the surface, it looked like recovery. Inside the company, it felt like something else entirely. The CEO sat at her desk late one evening, the building nearly empty, lights dimmed to energy-saving levels. She stared at the same skyline she once commanded without effort. It no longer reassured her. At the next board meeting, she spoke less. Listened more. Decisions that once came easily now passed through an extra filter, one she hadn't needed before. Assumption. It had been expensive. Not because of the disruption. Not because of the exposure. But because it revealed how fragile authority became when it confused confidence with entitlement. Across the city, Marcus returned to his routine as if nothing remarkable had happened. No interviews. No statements. No mention of the company or its CEO. To him, the moment had passed the instant the lesson landed. At a small gathering weeks later, an associate asked him about the incident. Did you ever think about pushing further? She asked. Taking more. Marcus shook his head. Power isn't proven by how much you can take, he said. It's proven by how little you need to. He remembered the handshake, not the act itself, but the pause before it. The recognition. The understanding. That was enough. Back at headquarters, a new policy circulated quietly through internal channels. Guest access protocols. Conduct standards. Mandatory leadership training. No one mentioned why. They didn't have to. In the lobby, the space where it had all begun, a receptionist greeted a visitor, a young man, uncertain, hands slightly trembling as he stepped forward. A senior executive approached, smiled, and extended his hand first. The moment passed unnoticed by most. But it mattered. Because dignity, once denied, had been reintroduced not by outrage or spectacle, but by consequence. And somewhere beyond the glass walls and polished floors, a simple truth remained. Respect costs nothing. But the lack of it? That bill always comes due.